Hi, my name's Logan Robbins, and I'm going to be talking about zone of proximal development, and it's also known as ZPD. So, this is where I observed the school right here. It's in the Nampa School District. The school was Lake Ridge Elementary. The teacher I observed was Wanda Weiskircher, and it was second grade. The demographics of the class were ages 7 to 8. Family income was moderate with some lower income. Mostly the race was Caucasian and Hispanic. There was a few Hispanics, mostly Caucasian though, and the class size was 23 students. So, theory information. So, zone of proximal development definition, the space between what learners can do independently and what they can do while participating with more capable others. And this theory was developed by a man named Lev Vygotsky. He believed that a child's actual development can be done independently, and potential development is what can be done when surrounded by those more capable. So he saw that children had the potential of more development when they're around those who are somewhat experts in the field. Like it could be a classmate that is way ahead or like has a really good understanding of it, or also a teacher or student teacher that is helping that child reach their full potential. So theory information continued. There's a picture right here of Lev Vygotsky. The process was thought of as a novice learner can learn from an expert. So, like I was talking about earlier, that learner that may be lacking or slightly behind can learn a lot from having an expert with them or someone who is really understanding the concept. That expert person can be thought of as a teacher or an advanced peer, like I said previously. So, those students who are always getting done really quickly and are actually understanding the information and it's pretty easy to them, they are those peers who would help out that one individual who needs it. And collaborative learning and modeling are useful tools when working with these kinds of situations. So, things like guided practice, when you have them in your lesson plan, those are the things that can be really useful and helpful to those students. And so, that is something that Lev Vygotsky thought was a good way of working with those students. So, question, how would you describe the theory to someone who has never heard about ZPD before? And ZPD, remember, is zone of proximal development. So at this time, I would call in someone to talk about it, and if they had an answer, and I'd probably talk to a few different students so we can kind of see all the different ways that it can be put. I think a simple way of putting it would just be that students are more likely to reach their full potential when working with someone who is advanced or an expert. So, demonstrations of ZPD. Group projects. So, you would want to create groups with different levels of ability. So, you want some kids that are kind of unsure with kids that are really understanding it and really getting the information. Peer tutoring, allow those who are ahead on work meet with students still working and have them help. Then counseling, you can also have students partner with students that don't typically work with and have them discuss issues and create solutions to that. So once again, students usually pick their friends or whatever And a lot of the time, friends are kind of like at the same level, and that's kind of why they partner up with them. But you want to make sure that everyone's partnering up with someone new and really having them understand and get it explained to them in maybe a different way than the teacher did. So it just may make more sense when a student explains something to their peer. Observations of ZPD in the classroom. While I observed, I saw that most of the zone proximal development was when students finished their work, and they would help those who weren't done with their work. So they have workbooks that they do every week, and there's a section in it every week that they do for that specific like short story that they read. And so when kids were done with that and they didn't have anything to do and they finished all their other work, they would typically ask the teacher for the most part if they could help the students who are still working on it. And they kind of have an idea of what students they need to be working with because it's about the same people every week that are still struggling with the concept, so they tend to gravitate towards them, which is really good. The teacher just made sure to always tell them not to answer their work, but to give them guidance. So not to be like, well, this is the answer. Students were told, well, like, let's look at the example and then see if we can figure it out from there. Most students were actually really excited to extend their help, which is really nice to see as well, and easy for a teacher to like continue. Another way I witnessed it in action was in their morning meetings. This was more of like the counseling concept where they talk about more serious topics, and then they would talk about like how they could fix or solve that problem, whatever is going on. That way they're like there for each other if they're ever going through a hard time. And I think it's a great example of like helping those kids who don't know like what to do or they've never been in the experience. So it was really nice to see that in the classroom as well. Other ways to incorporate ZBD in more classrooms, have more peer partnership discussions on topics. So pick the partners based on ability once again, and then split classroom into groups depending on level of ability. This is when it's helpful to have like a student teacher or a volunteer that knows the information in there, so they can have like the higher ability kids in one group and then the lower ability in another group, and just have that teacher or volunteer or student teacher be helping that group with modeling and like doing guidance stuff with their concepts. And then include scaffolding as a method when doing small group work or one-on-one sessions. This is where the teacher will have the opportunity to have a guided practice with their students. They will start off modeling while the students copy what is being done. As this is being done, the teacher can slowly put them into some independent work. Another question: what would you do as a teacher who is incorporating ZPD into the classroom? So once again, I would call on a few different people and just kind of get what their idea of it would be, so I can kind of see if they're really understanding what zone of proximal development is. And then checking for understanding, this is when I'd ask them to get out a piece of paper and answer these 3 questions. I will give them 5 minutes to complete the activity, and then the 3 questions on the side would be: who developed the theory of zone of proximal development, ZBD? What is the general explanation/definition of ZBD? And then list 2 examples of how to incorporate ZPD into the classroom. And then I would collect all of their papers and just kind of go over it quickly over the 3 questions before they leave the class or whatever. It'd kind of be their exit ticket, and then go back through and check their answers to make sure people are really understanding it. And then these are my references. I just used the book for this, and the rest was just based off what I witnessed in my classroom. So thank you for listening and watching.